Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is your DFS preview for the 2021 WGC FedEx St. Jude Invitational. If you want to see what I'll be covering in this video, I have timestamps in the description below. Those timestamps can also be found on YouTube's progress bar. All I gotta do is hover over it and you'll see them there. I figured we can skip through the summary and dive right into the video, save us a little bit of time and get right to the point. So without further ado, we'll start here with the tournament fact sheets. I like starting here because we get to see the golf course being used, how the tournament's set up, the course statistics, the grass stats, and the architect. All really good data points to start your research with. So we are at TPC Southwind. My data goes back to 2013. This golf course has been the host of each FedEx St. Jude tournament, and I'll get to that here in a second, since 2013. And I think it even dates further back than that. Now, coming back to what I was saying, this became a WGC event in 2018. Prior to that, it was a full field event with a cut, 156 golfers, and you could, I believe it was an open qualifier because it was a St. Jude Classic. It wasn't an invitational at that time. So that is the big change, but I think you can still use course history. Like I said, it goes back to 2013 at least. And I mean, I'm going to be using course history. I don't think there's any limitations that you should have when looking at course history. So by all means, my suggestion, go back as far as this golf course has been the host. Again, my data goes back to 2013, so I'll be using all course history stats. The tournament is set up as a par 70, 35 on both nines, and it's at 7,200 yards, which is pretty much around par, you know, yardage wise for a par 70. So nothing crazy with that. Par 70 means probably going to be easy to get that sub 70 bonus on DraftKings, which is obviously what we all, well, it only gives you like an extra 3 or 5 points. I think it's an extra 5 points, which actually in this limited field event can be very beneficial. So don't sleep on it. And if you wanted to look at like data points to research that, I would just look at, you know, scoring average, and maybe if you have the opportunity or the ability to look at how many rounds under 70 or how many rounds 1, 2, 3 under par that a golfer has compared to the rest of their rounds, and use the majority of that. You know, like let's say a golfer has 20 rounds under their belt and 14 of them are 1 under or better. That would be a golfer I would want to play, as opposed to someone who has even splits of 1, 2 under par, 1, 2 over par, that kind of thing. So anyways, I would look at something like that. And like I said, but kind of what I was going to a little earlier, or saying a little earlier, it's only 5 points, so it's not that big of a deal, but it could be. I don't know why I really spent that much time talking about that, but whatever. Course statistics, 4,300 square feet for green size. That's pretty small on tour. So if you were looking at small greens for your research purposes, I think that's a smart idea to do. The rest of this, I wouldn't worry about. If you do have stats that allow you to see how many, say, hazards somebody hit or hits on average, that's actually not a bad one to look at, since there are 11 water hazards and 11 holes where water is in play. Now, I did do a course breakdown, and I would say like really 9 holes have water in play. 2 of them have a creek that kind of run through, which isn't really in play. I mean, I don't foresee it in play. Sure, it could be if a golfer is being high risk, but there isn't a need to do that. So I don't really see those 2 holes having water in play. But either way, if you have the stats or you have the ability to see hazards per round, that kind of thing, I think that's a smart way to go about it. The greens are champion Bermuda grass, which really just look at Bermuda grass. Most of the greens that are Bermuda on tour are champion grass. Sure, there's some Tiff Eagle or even Tiff Dwarf Bermuda grass on tour. I don't really know the difference between those 3 strains of grass, but On the surface, it doesn't appear that there's much difference. And what I mean by that is just looking at stats. I don't think there's a huge difference, but if you have the opportunity to see a champion Bermuda grass versus Tiff Eagle, I mean, if you have the opportunity to research all that also, be my guest. I think that's a smart way to go about it because I really don't know the difference. Haven't done enough research on it, but might be worth it. We have zoysia grass on the tees and fairways. Obviously, the fairways are the big ones that we have to think about. I really honestly would not search. I would not do any research on zoysia grass. I don't think it's that huge of a deal. Like, just stick with your Bermuda because the rough is Bermuda. And, you know, a lot of the approach shots are going to be hit from the rough. All year around the green, I shouldn't say all. Most of your around the green stats will be from the rough. And it's all Bermuda. And Bermuda's tricky to hit out of. So I do think it's well worth it to use Bermuda for all your research purposes. You can see some other additional notes here. I'm not going to go over it, but I highly recommend you guys to pause the video and read whatever you think is important. And then you can see the architect here. I don't know if Ron Pritchard has done another golf course on tour, so I really I don't think you really have to look at architect whatsoever. Let's go ahead and move to the next piece, which is our weather. So I like to look at a weather forecast. This is a Monday night, so anything can change, obviously, but it's just to give you an idea what to expect, and also just show you what has happened on a Monday, what's happened on a Tuesday, Wednesday, you know, leading into the tournament, to see if rain is going to soften the golf course, or perhaps wind is going to dry it out, make it firm, make it fast, that kind of stuff. From all accounts that I've seen, it looks like kind of your typical southeast temperature weather type of day. I'm not from that area. I've never lived in that area, so I shouldn't say typical like I know, but I would expect it to be around 90 degrees most of the time. And it's mostly sunny with very little rain. Doesn't look like we have to worry about anything, honestly. Like Thursday, our winds are what, 5 to 10 miles an hour. I would use windfinder.com to really look at your wind, but not a lot of wind on Thursday. Friday's the same thing, 5 to 10 miles an hour. So we don't really have to worry. And when it comes to like tee time splits, I usually use the rule of thumb of trying to, if there's a tie, by the way, weather stats or tee time splits to me is never an end all be all. It's just a tiebreaker. So if I'm looking at a tiebreaker between two golfers, I would much rather select the guy who has the PM AM wave. There's just more rhythm to that type of round. You don't have to wake up super early on the Thursday and then wait all, you know, the rest of the afternoon Thursday and then the morning of Friday. That kind of slows your rhythm down a little bit. I would much rather, I shouldn't say much rather, again, just tiebreakers. I would give the tiebreaker to the guy who has that PM AM wave. So come back with the strategy video tomorrow that I'll be doing. I go over tee time pairings there. We'll cover a lot of this and hopefully, you know, either touch on something that you like about a golfer or perhaps something to hold you back from one. But that's how I look at it. I don't think weather is really going to be a huge factor for any success this week. So what I want to do is, how about this? Let's actually talk about the WGC event. So I have Wikipedia up, and it's mostly just to show you the qualifying criteria. So I don't think this is what we want to see, but I kind of went into just WGC invitationals, and obviously this is the page that shows up. It says it's current field about 75 players. That's not true, but the qualifying that happens is players ranked among the top 50 in the world 1 week and 2 weeks prior to the event qualify for this. Tournament winners of worldwide events since the prior year's tournament with an official World Golf Ranking strength of field of 115 points or more, and then the winner of one selected tournament from each of the PGA Tour, and then you can read it's Australasia, Sunshine Tour, Asian Tour, and Japan Golf Tour. So that's why we have 66. You know, you have top 50 plus a few more golfers, which makes the strength of field this week pretty strong. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But this tournament's no slouch when it comes to your top golfers in the world. I think it has a strength of field over 700, which is pretty good for a 60-man field. But we can transition from here into past results and target scores. So we'll look at, you know, cut scores, we'll look at winning scores, that kind of thing. So again, in actually 2019 is when the WGC event. So 2018 was the last year that the full field event happened. So kind of made a little error earlier. My bad. But anyways, we have 2 full years where there's a WGC event, and then 2018 dating back, it was a full field event. So as we look at this, keep that in mind. 2020, Justin Thomas won at 13 under. 2019, Brooks won at 16 under. I'm not going to go through all the golfers, but 19 under in 2018 won. 2017 it was 10. 2016 it was 13. 2015 it was 13. 2014 it was 10, and 2013 it was 12. So we can expect a score probably around that 13 under mark, 13 to 15. I think, you know, obviously DJ won this in 2018 at 19, and then second place was 13. You remember, I suggest looking at second place because a lot of the times the winner can win in a landslide, like he just gets super hot, and same with second place, but usually second, third place gives you a good idea of what the actual, you know, your top 10%, no, I shouldn't say 10%, your top 10 golfers, you know, what you need to score to get inside the top 10, which obviously that's what we use here at SweetSpotDFS to try to figure out our optimal lineup golfers and who we like. So when we look at that, it's around, you know, somewhere between 9 under to 13 under. I think the scoring is better just because the strength of field is greater. I don't know strength of fields for 2018 and beyond. I also don't know the strength of field for 2020 and 2019. But I can tell you this, WGC events always include the top 50 in the world. So you're always going to have your greatest strength of field events in your WGC events. Or put it this way, you'll always have better strength of fields per person, if you want to call it that, with the WGC events. And with that, I think that's what's going to cause lower scoring on average. I think that's a pretty logical explanation or reason. So again, that's why I think 13 to 15 under will be your winning score. And I don't know why I brought up cut events, because there won't be a cut this week. It's a limited field event. Everyone will make the cut, so we don't have to worry about that. Just load up on all your birdie makers, and really golfers that have good course history. I really do feel like that's a good stat to be looking into. So yeah, 13 to 15 under is kind of the target score we're looking at. So from here, let's go ahead and get to a course breakdown. And with the course breakdown, we're looking at shot shapes required on this golf course. And if there's like a shot shape that really stands out over another, then we'll dive into the spreadsheet and see which golfers actually have that shot shape and kind of pick out our favorite ones. If there really isn't a shot shape that matters, we'll just skip past it. But it's for you guys to know. So I would say this: pause the video at any time, read what I have in the descriptions for each hole. That'd be in this column here. I'm not going to go over them, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to read them. So we'll start here, and I'll scroll down. There's your back nine. I'm really interested in this. So we have our shot shapes off the tee and approach. You can see we have 3 holes where a draw off the tee is beneficial, 1 hole where a fade is beneficial off the tee, and then 10 holes where neither of them are beneficial. And then for approach, we have 3 and 4. 3 for draw, 4 for fade, and then 11 for any. So what that tells me is Off the tee kind of benefits the draw, obviously. Approach really doesn't matter. And really, it also kind of goes where you place your tee ball in the fairway will determine what type of approach shot you need to hit. How I have it on screen and how I do this is I look at it as if, you know, you're in the middle of the fairway, or trying to find the middle of the fairway. So off the tee, obviously if a shot shape is required to find the middle of the fairway, that's what I'll put here, and that's what you see. And same thing applies for approach. If we're in the middle of the fairway, what does it look like into the green? So that's what we have. So it doesn't really matter what shot shape is used. I also will say it kind of looks like having a shot maker may be more important, or somebody who's on top of their game who keeps hitting the same shot shape over and over again, a la Colin Morikawa. So yeah, I would say lean for shot makers, golfers that hit both shot shapes, or I want to say like go with your fade golfers, but yeah, I probably would go fade. I think approach is going to matter a little bit more than off the tee, and a lot of the holes where you have to hit draws, you could just club down and not have to hit draws. So I would definitely I would consider fades a little bit more important than draws. But again, it's any shot shape is fine. Let's move on. Really, now we just get into the bucket system, which if you're unfamiliar with that, it's just my way to analyze the top 10 of every tournament every year. Try to figure out what stats matter when looking, you know, when researching what type of golfer we want to play. A lot of people will just use strokes gained metrics, that kind of stuff. I do use strokes gained metrics, but it's through the bucket system. So you can see I have rankings here for each of my strokes gained stats, and I'll go over that a little bit later. But basically, we have 6 stat categories that we look at: last year finishing results, last week finishing results, course history, recent form, salaries, believe it or not, and then strokes gained. And I'll explain each one of these as I go through them, but what I want to start with is past optimal lineups, because we're going to go right into our salaries here. But like I said, I want to start with our past optimal lineups. So let's see. We go to 2018, and really what I'm looking for is your top 5, your top 6. I don't have them marked here, but I can guarantee you I'm probably scrolling down and selecting the first 6 golfers. As you can see, 49,200 ends up being our optimal. I will say it's probably these 3 no matter what. I don't have DraftKings points for this. I wish I did, but I don't. And it could be any of these guys in the top 6. But you can see Chris Kirk is the most expensive golfer. So no matter what, the most salary being used is going to be 49,200. The cheapest would be this, which is 48,100. So we take off $1,100, but our optimal lineup in 2018 is going to be around 49,200, which is perfect for me because you know my realistic lineup is always over 49,000. We want to use as close to 50,000 as possible. There's no point in leaving a lot of money on the table. So with that being said, that's your 2018 optimal lineup. 2019, I actually do have the $1 GPP winning lineup, which is nice. I'm glad we're kind of later in the year. Because most of my data collection, I always think of new things throughout the year. So usually at the end of the year, I have a lot of the stuff that I bring into the next year, which just, it's always new stuff here at the end. I'm glad I have this from 2019. Just makes it easier to go through. So either way, your $1 GPP winning lineup included an 11K golfer, 3 7s, an 8K golfer, and another 7. So 4 sevens, an 8K, and an 11K golfer equaling $50,000. That scored 607.5. Your optimal lineup used 49,600, which left 400 on the table, and it's all these golfers with a little black tick marks. So we have Bubba Watson, Ian Poulter, Matt Fitzpatrick, Leishman, Webb, and Brooks, which again, it's an 11K golfer, 8K, and 4 sevens. So really interesting. And I didn't really cover that in the 2018 one, but that would be an 11K, an 8K, 2 sevens, and 2 sixes, which is very similar. Very similar. It included an 8 and it included an 11, which were your highest price guys. So that's worth mentioning, worth thinking about. In 2020, our $3 birdie lineup scored 508. I'm sorry. Let me go back to 2019. I told you what the $1 GPP winning lineup scored, 607.5. The optimal lineup scored 628. So there's going to be a smaller gap between optimal lineup and GPP during these limited field events, and it just makes sense, right? So in 2020, our $3 birdie scored 581.5, used up 49,600, and we had a 10K golfer, a 9K, actually 2 9Ks, 2 6Ks, and a 7K. So that's very unique. I've never seen that before. Well, I shouldn't say that. You rarely see that. Your optimal lineup scored 613.5 points, so a little bit more of a gap there, 30 points between the two. It used up $49,900, and it's all these guys again with the black tick mark. So we have 10K golfer, 9K, 8K, 9K, 6K, 9K, 6K. Whoa. Hold on. 10, 6, 9, 6, 8, 9. There we go. 2 9Ks, an 8K, and 2 6Ks, plus 1 10K. So again, we're seeing more of those 10K golfers in the optimal lineup. Don't be afraid to use them. You're gonna have to use them, most likely. Let's see here. That will wrap up the optimal lineup part. Let's go ahead and look at our salaries. Again, we talked about our 10Ks. How about this? Let's clear this. Salaries. We talked about our 10Ks. As you can see, we have one golfer. The min here represents the least amount of times this has happened each year that I've recorded these stats. So obviously, 1 is our minimum for 10K, with a max of 4 inside the top 10. So it's really telling you, don't shy away from using 10K golfers. I will warn you that we've had 0 before finish inside the top 5, but you know, some reassurance for you guys. There was one, like, at least we have 1 every year inside the top 10. The only other salary that has at least 1 inside the top 10 is your 8K, and obviously we went through that with all the optimal lineups. We've seen an 8K in each optimal lineup. Again, we have 0. We've had 0 finish inside the top 5, so sometimes that means they're not in the optimal lineup. So you have to keep that in mind. Outside of those, that's our 3rd ranked bucket and our 4th ranked bucket, and that's all because of the frequencies that happen inside the top 10. Your number 1 bucket are 7K golfers. We've had 15 inside the top 10, but we have seen 0 before, so it's not a for sure, you know, salary we want to target. But I think you're going to be okay if you select 6K golf or 7K golfers. I really don't think there's an issue. And here's an interesting point. So we really haven't gone over strength of field, but I am recording strength of field for each of these buckets, for each of the stat categories and the buckets inside them. Your 7K range is greater than your 8K range. So perhaps this year, you know, the 7K range will dethrone the 8K range. As well, I shouldn't say dethrone it, but you know, we might not see an 8K golfer inside the top 10, which would bring this from 1 to 0. But yeah, I thought that was interesting to have the strength of field a little bit greater from your 7Ks to your 8Ks. And your number 2 bucket, 6.5 and above, this is your upper 6K range. It's shown up one more time than our 10K golfers. That's probably heavily to do with the fact that there are usually more golfers in that bucket per year. And now that I see these numbers, this is also incorporating when this was a quote unquote classic, a WGC, or a full field event, I should say. So yeah, that's going to be skewed a little bit. I would say this: 10K you definitely want, 7K you definitely want, and 8K. I would still hop on that bandwagon and just select your 8K golfers. We have more in the field than we do on average per year, so that's always a good sign. Strength of field's pretty high, but so is that 9K range. I do like the 9K range as well. So, you know, when you start your lineups, don't be afraid to use a 10K golfer first of all, and from there, you know, maybe fill it in from the bottom up. Try to find some 6K golfers you like, add those. I wouldn't add more than 2, just add 1, and then go with your 7K. And again, I would say add somewhere between 1 to 2 and see how you can fill in the rest of your lineup that way. So that's kind of my advice. Now, I like to go from here. I don't really care to talk about the golfers and their salaries. Actually, how about this? We will. Let me just bring it up. So of the 10K golfers, just to show you, I mean, we have, let me hide this. Colin Morikawa, Xander, Brooks, Jordan, Dustin, and Rory. The fact that Rory is in here at the 10K range, and that makes 6 golfers inside this 10K range and above, it's almost solidifying the fact that we're going to see one of these guys inside the top 10. So for me, I think it's just a no-brainer to start your lineups here. I know it's not something a lot of the people in the industry like to do, but I think why not? You should. The 9K range does look good, but just pick one golfer from the 9K range to pair up with your 10K golfers. I shouldn't say. I'm suggesting you do these things. I'm not demanding you to do it. Just I think that's just a smart thing to do. Anyways, moving on. I suppose let's just go 10. Your 9s. I like the 9s. Thomas, Hovland, Oosthuizen. Those are all golfers I like. Even Patrick Cantlay, Daniel Berger, who's had a lot of success here. Scotty Scheffler. Like, there's a lot of good 9K golfers. And then your 8K golfers, they're okay. I mean, I like a lot of them. I don't care for Tony. Fitzpatrick's okay. Reed, I don't trust. If you don't know anything about Patrick Reed, if you haven't heard, I should say, Reed went from the Open Championship in England, flew over for the 3M Open in Minneapolis, then flew over to Japan for the Olympics, and now is flying back to Memphis. I don't think, regardless of how strong you are mentally or how much fortitude you have, just endurance-wise, I just don't trust it. So I'm not going to be playing Patrick Reed. Maybe in one lineup for a FOMO reason, but that's about it. Same kind of goes with Shane Lowry. He didn't do the same thing. He didn't play at the 3M Open. It's only Patrick Reed who's done that. But I don't really trust Shane Lowry. The other guys though, like Neiman, Answer, I'll always be on those guys. I like Cameron Smith, Corey Connors, great ball striker. Fleetwood, same thing. Although he's been kind of shaky, but either way, not terrible. And then your 7K range is filled with a bunch of good golfers. Remember, the 7K range is 4 points higher strength of field than the 8K range. Will Zalatoris is in here, Kokrak, Sungjae Im, Harris English, Brian Harmon, Tyrrell Hatton, Sergio, Adam Scott, just a bunch of good golfers. And your 6K range has a bunch of like high talent golfers. You know, Cameron Davis, Sammy Burns, those guys can make birdies in bunches. Same when Matt Wolf is on top of his game, and same with Cameron Champ, who just won 2 weeks ago. A solid group. I like Ryan Palmer at 6'5". Same with Stuart Sink, like really good. And then your lower 6K range, you can find some value here. I'm not gonna go through everyone, but I do like a lot of these guys. So I don't think you have. Here's what I say: the dark reds, I probably would stay away from them a little bit. I think a lot of it's just you already know this, and like a Brad Kennedy. Who's playing Brad Kennedy? Probably nobody. I don't see a reason to. Same with Wade Ormsby. And in many ways, like Jim Herman, I wouldn't play either. So either way, that's my feelings on it. Let's move on. As we talk about the rest of the buckets, I'm going to start with the last year bucket because it's usually the one that I start with to begin with. Nice. It's a no-brainer to start with salaries because we all start, we look at salaries. But I like looking at last year because it's so recent when it comes to course history. So, and maybe I should change that around. Maybe I should start with course history and then look at recent form. Either way. Our number one bucket are golfers who did not play last year, believe it or not. So target those who did not play. Our number two bucket, golfers who top 20 the week before. And again, this actually not the week before, the year before. This goes back to all St. Jude's. So that includes a WGC event. This also includes the full field event. Personally, I think now that it's a limited field, top 20 is a third of your field usually. I would probably, this could be my number one bucket just to start with, trying to find golfers who top 20 last week. And our number three bucket are 40 to 60. I really only like to talk about the top three buckets. Obviously, you can see the rankings here and then the finishing range. Basically, it's their finishing position from last year. When we look at strength of field, our number one bucket based off of that is that 1 to 20 from last year. Our number two bucket is actually tied between number 4 and 3, which is that 20 to 40 and then that 40 to 60 range. And then obviously we had did not plays, which 115. The other two buckets, one of them has 0 golfers in it this year. You can kind of see that within these columns here. We have 0 for 80 plus. Really, it's probably just withdraws when we look at that one. And then we have 5 golfers that are in that 60 to 80 range, which usually never good. So let's go ahead and look at the golfers that we might like out of this group. So we'll start with last year ones, which again are those that did not play last year. Let me sort this by salary. Interesting. So we have really only 5 golfers who are 7K and above. That's it. And there are no 8K golfers, no 9K golfers, no 10K golfers. Kind of makes sense because obviously this is a WGC event and it was last year. Your top 50 golfers are always going to be, I shouldn't say always going to be in it, but there's very little change within the top 50. And if there is, it's because one of the young guys, like a Will Zalatoris, breaks into the official World Golf Ranking and makes a little bit of noise. Or, you know, one of the veterans that might have been on a cold stretch for a while has been heating up, maybe won a tournament or two, like a Stuart Sink. But either way, yeah, 7K, not a lot of golfers. High quality ones: Will Zalatoris, Harris English, Brian Harmon, Adam Scott, Justin Rose. So if you're starting your 7K golfers, maybe you start here to try to get one of these last year ones in there. Otherwise, it's all 6K. And a lot of interesting golfers. I mean, like Lee Westwood doesn't seem like a terrible play. Cameron Davis, Sam Burns, Carlos Ortiz, Stuart Sink, even golfers that I do like this week. So that's your last year ones. Your last year twos have 4 of the 6 golfers in the 10K range. And again, this is your top 20 golfers. So Wow. Palmer at 6,500. I like that. That's to me that's pretty good value. I think you can just pick whoever you like here. I don't think there's really an issue with who you start from here. I would probably pick two golfers. So I'm probably picking an 8 or a 9K golfer and pairing them up with a 10K golfer, most likely. Maybe I'll even grab a third one and try to fit in Phil or Ryan Palmer down here in the 6K range. Like, that doesn't seem like a terrible idea. Yeah, I mean, take your pick. A lot of good golfers here. 9K, 8K range. Take your pick. Our last year 3 bucket actually only has one other 10K golfer. So that's interesting. Let me open this back up. I want to see where that other 10K golfer is. Fours. Jordan Spieth. Okay. We're not going to be talking about Jordan. Although the last year 4 bucket, again, is tied with the last year 3 bucket when it comes to strength of field. So perhaps it's worth mentioning. Just know Jordan Spieth is in that one. But your number 3 bucket is golfers who finish in that 20 to 40 range, right? Nope, 40 to 60 range, sorry. And it's headed by Rory McIlroy and Victor Hovland. Like, those two golfers, to me, I think that's where I'm going to start a lot of my lineups around. Just seems good. You know, this is a good spot for Rory. He's really good on Bermuda. A lot of people probably won't be on him, although I really don't care about ownership. The optimal lineup doesn't care about ownership. I think it's an okay play. Same with Victor Hovland. Victor Hovland seems like a really good play here as well. And Bermuda's not a bad surface for him either. So we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 golfers, 8K and above. And really, I mean, you can see it on here. There are 5 golfers that are in the 6K range. I wouldn't play Matthew Wolff, although it's a no-cut event, so you can feel comfortable that he's not going to really implode. Still could withdraw, but he's not going to miss a cut. And the other guys aren't that good on Bermuda, so I really don't care to play any of these guys. And how about this? We'll take a look at last year 4s, just to be quick and thorough. So Spieth, DeChambeau, Cantlay, those are good golfers. Yeah, I think I would probably choose golfers from this bucket as well. So last year 4 is definitely in play. And that's probably going to wrap up the last year buckets. I don't want to spend too much time on each of these. I just want to give you guys kind of the general idea of what to look for. Again, this is a preview. It's not a strategy. Yeah, here we are, last week 3s. So this is just last week's finishing position at the Olympics. Or at least that's what we'll be looking at this week. But as a whole, over this tournament, how past top 10 finishers have done, most of them have not played the week before, which is perfect because it's a long trip from Japan. It makes sense to avoid golfers who are coming from there over here. But I can't say that with full certainty. Let's take a look at this. So number 1 bucket, golfers who did not play. That's the majority of our field. Like, we only have 19 golfers in this field that actually played last week. The other 47 didn't. So I do believe we're going to see more golfers from here. I mean, the strength of field, 437, is enormous. Yeah, I mean, I could see maybe 7 or 8 of our golfers inside the top 10 having this bucket. So definitely gonna, go for those guys. Number 2 bucket, golfers who, well, we have none in the field because it would be a missed cut. We're looking for missed cuts. So number 2, we won't be looking at. We'll replace number 3 with our number 2s. And that's your top 20 finishers last week. So those that did well in the Olympics, I'm okay with. And if you're worried about this being kind of different from, year to year, I'll say this. If we go back to 2019, we had the Open Championship that preceded this tournament, meaning there was a cross-country flight, or not even cross-country, a global flight. 2018 Memorial, that didn't work. Okay, so now, never mind. I won't lie, when I first did this piece of research, I saw 2019. I'm like, oh, the Open is right before. But either way, you can see Brooks Koepka finished 4th. We have a bunch of top 20s that finished inside the top 10. So don't worry about the cross-country flight. It's going to be fine. So that's our number 2 bucket, and then our number 3 bucket's really the 4 bucket, and those are golfers that finished between 20 and 40th place last week, which, you know what, these are probably going to be your low-owned golfers of the week. So I think it's you know, for those that like the ownership leverage, it's a good place to start too. So let's go ahead and look at these guys. So last week ones, golfers who did not play. We have 3 of our 10K golfers here. Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Dustin Johnson. I don't no problem starting any of your lineups with those golfers. Have a majority of our 9K golfers, really good ones too. Oosthuizen, DeChambeau, Cantlay, Berger, Scheffler. 8K range. I like Webb Simpson. I don't care for the other 2. I don't care for Finau or Fitzpatrick. A lot of our 7K golfers here. I think that's the majority. It's almost all of them. I think we have 10 total, and that's 9. Oh, no, we have 10. So I think that's all of our 7K golfers. And then 6K, which is a lot. That's most of, I think that's all of the 6K range. Anyways, 10K, I think it's a good place to start. Again, I mean, Koepka seems like a good choice. Same with DJ. I really have no issues playing any of these guys, and they're okay on Bermuda. Believe it or not, DJ actually has the better Bermuda stats, so maybe it's worth playing DJ over the other guys. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's your last week bucket 1s. Go to our last week bucket 3s, which we're calling our last week bucket 2s, and we have Morikawa, Schauffele, and McIlroy. I would almost put a bet out there that one of these guys is going to finish inside the top 10. And I feel pretty confident that one of them is going to finish inside the top 5. So definitely select a golfer from here. I think, honestly, I think it's kind of a competition between these and the last week 1s. So obviously we have all 6 of our golfers here. Who do you think is better? You know, to me, like if I'm looking at this, I'm choosing between Rory, Xander, and Morikawa. And then I'm selecting between Koepka, Spieth, and Johnson. How I would do my lineups. I really don't care to compare Rory to DJ when it comes to these buckets, at least, because personally, I think we're probably going to see 2 sets here, the 3s and the 1s. So Morikawa, Schauffele, McIlroy. I think one of these guys is going to finish inside the top 10, and then DJ, Brooks, and Spieth. One of these guys will finish inside the top 10. So it's up to you to try to figure out which one you like the most. Some good 9K golfers. I like Hovland and Casey. Kind of lukewarm on Matsuyama. And then all 8Ks, so nobody in the 7K range. So this is a pretty decent bucket. Our last week 4s, we only have 5 golfers in it, and it's headed by Justin Thomas. Patrick Reed, almost an auto fade for most of us, I think. Definitely going to be an auto fade for me. Shane Lowry, Sungjae Im, Siwoo Kim. Yeah, I think JT is definitely the clear-cut winner out of this group, but if you wanted to be kind of contrarian, I don't know how many people are going to play Reed, primarily because of all the travel, so he might actually be a decent play. Yeah, same goes with Lowry, Im, and Kim. They're probably going to be guys that a lot of the public avoids. I mean, it's a limited field event, so ownership's still going to be pretty high. You know, it's going to be like somewhere between 12 and 18%. But when it's compared to other golfers in this field, that's going to be pretty low. So you'll get a little bit leverage with these 3 golfers, and really these 4 golfers. I think a lot of people will be on Justin Thomas this week. So anyways, I don't like talking about ownership. It's not my angle, so we'll skip past that and get into the next bucket. which will be course history. Our number one bucket, golfers who have that 1 to 20 course history average. So their average finishing position is between 1 and 20. We usually see 2 on average inside the top 10 and 1 of them inside the top 5. So it shows you really how strong this bucket is. And strength of field is pretty decent, makes up almost 30% of the strength of field. And we see nearly the same amount of golfers in the bucket this year as we do on average. So it's a good bucket to go with. Number 2 bucket, golfers who've never seen the tournament or who've never seen the golf course, believe it or not. Now, again, this goes back to the St. Jude Classic days where it was a full field event with a cut and everything. Average per year 35, so obviously that's a little bit skewed. That strength of field's not very high, so I'm kind of probably going to avoid this one. And in fact, I don't think we're going to look at the top 3 buckets this way. We're looking at the top 3 buckets this way. Strength of field. So our number 1 bucket would be that 20 to 40 range of course history. Our number 2 bucket would be that course history range between 1 and 20. And then course history 3 would be our range between 40 and 60. So we'll look at it this way. So we're looking at course history bucket 1, 3, and 4. So our course history 1 bucket's really our second one. It's the second best one. And we have Colin, Brooks, and DJ. Remember, Brooks and DJ are part of that last week 1 bucket, which is what we're trying to kind of avoid. I almost feel like the symmetry is too good for this, where it's like, hey, pick Colin if you don't pick the other 2 last week 3s in the 10K and above range. And if you do pick Colin, don't pick these 2, but then pick the other guy, which would be Spieth. So maybe start your lineups with Colin and Spieth, but that's like too poetic. The other way to go about it too would, or the flip side of that is if you go with Brooks, or if you go with Colin, then you would go with Rory. No. Who's the other 10K golfer? Shoot. Okay. Yeah, if you don't go with Colin, then you go with Xander or Rory. That's kind of where I was trying to get at. But anyways, that's too poetic, too symmetrical. That it doesn't work that way ever. So I wouldn't worry about that. But it might work. It could work. Probably not, but it might be. 9Ks, just 2 of them, JT and Oosthuizen. Those are good 9K golfers. 8K I don't care for. Like I don't care for any of those 8K golfers, and I don't really care for these ones either. So if I'm really selecting golfers from this group, this is where I'm starting my 10Ks, probably with one of these guys, or maybe I put my 9K. I mean, JT and Oosthuizen I like a lot. So I mean, these are my 5 golfers I like out of this group. Remember, we're skipping past the 2s, going to the 3s, and there we go. We have our other 10K golfers. So again, the symmetry's there. Maybe it's a sign. I don't know. Probably going to avoid it, but yeah, I don't mind any of these 10K golfers. I don't really have it. I'm not going to say anything. I was thinking about saying something, but I mean, it's arguably Rory's best surface, Bermuda. So I don't mind Rory here. And then with that being said, same with Xander. No cut event. Obviously, he just won Olympic gold. So maybe he's fatigued, but maybe this is just right up his alley once again. So yeah, Xander to me, I think is okay. And then our 9Ks, Matsuyama, Cantlay, Berger, Casey, pretty good. 8Ks, I like Simpson, I like Answer. I don't care for Reed. And then 7 and 6K, there's some good golfers here. I like Champ, Sink, Palmer. I like Scott, Sergio. And I'm okay with M, but I'm probably going to avoid M. And then our last bucket in the course history we're talking about is this 4, and that's obviously that 40 to 60 range. And we have Hovland and DeChambeau as well as Scheffler. Like, those are really good 9K golfers. There's probably one mispriced guy, and that'd be Tyrrell Hatton. Hatton is pretty good on Bermuda. He does make up 15 points. Here's a good point. 15 points of the strength of field is provided by Hatton. The only two golfers better than him in this group is DeChambeau and Viktor Hovland. So you can see the points that he's providing here, and it's a formula that the official World Golf Ranking uses. There's one piece that I'm missing, and it's a percentage point, depending on, I can't remember exactly what it is, but I'm usually off by 5 points, either above or below. So I'm pretty on par, and I think Hatton probably makes up 15 points. So anyways, Hatton is the third ranked golfer in this bucket, and obviously he is the 9th priced golfer in this bucket, and he's at $7,400. So yeah, probably a huge misprice. I'm sure he's going to be really popular. He doesn't have a good last year bucket, so keep that in mind, but did want to mention that. And I think that's going to be it for course history buckets. Like I said, I'm using the strength of field. You know, these 3 buckets make up what, 85% of the strength of field. I think it's fair to say we're going to see these guys, I should say these guys, but these buckets will be represented inside the top 10. Let's put it that way. And then the last bucket to look at is our recent form. Actually, no, it's a second to last bucket. Recent form. This is our 5th stat that we're looking at. Your number 1 bucket for recent form is that 60 to 80 range, which I will say this, probably not my favorite this week because of the strength of field. Again, I'll be using that. We only have 10 this year, and on average we've seen 47. Again, this goes back to when this was a full field event, so I should have dialed it back and not used all the years. Here, I'm gonna do this on camera. Let's go here and look at our recent form buckets. And what I'm going to do, since we look at top 10, is go to the top 10 thing. I pull data from here all the time, so I think I can go like this. And copy it over and see what our buckets are then. So it changes. Number 1 bucket's 20 to 40, number 2 bucket's 40 to 60, and number 3 bucket is 1 to 20. Which are our greatest strength of field buckets. So I'm going to move this back, and we're just going to talk about the 3 buckets I just said. Which is easy, it's just the top 3. So again, our number 1 bucket was the 20 to 40, number 2 was 1 to 20, and number 3 was 40 to 60. And really that's also kind of how it shows out in the strength of field as well. So let's go ahead and look at those guys. So we'll start with recent form 3s. And again, that is your 20 to 40 range. We have one of our 10K golfers here, Dustin Johnson. Now, I think he's on the lower, like he's on the negative end of this bucket. Like, he's been playing kind of poorly as of late, so I'd probably stay away from Dustin Johnson. He has won this tournament before when it was a full field event, so he has good good memories here, that kind of stuff. It's weird. Last year 12, course history 12. Let me look at his course history really quick. Interesting that all those numbers equal 12. So now that it's a WGC event, I mean, his average finish is 16, which, whatever. It's still good, but not for his price tag. So yeah, I'll probably stay away from Dustin Johnson. But then we have JT there, Viktor Hovland, Matsuyama. 9K range is just loaded in this for this bucket. Same kind of applies for the 8K range. You know, I don't really like the 8K range this week, but this is a bucket that has most of your good 8K golfers. And then very few 7Ks, but some of the guys that I told you have liked, and some of the 6Ks, which is fine. I think really we're highlighting the 9K range. You know, JT, Cantlay, Scheffler, I really like those guys this week. Corey Connors actually plays well on Bermuda, at least he has this year. And Joaquin Niemann, don't sleep on him. So yeah, those are probably my favorite golfers from that bucket. Now we flip to recent form bucket 4, which is that 1 to 20 range. So these are the guys that have been golfing really well as of late. One 6K golfer, Aaron Rai, probably not going to play Aaron Rai. Harris English seems like a decent 7K golfer, but really a bulk of our golfers are from 9K and above. And it's just a really good starting place for your 10K golfers. And if you do like the 9K, you know, Oosthuizenberger and Casey, those aren't bad plays. I'm going to go ahead and skip past this and look at our last recent form bucket, which would be our twos, recent form twos. This one's a crazy one because we have Bryson at 9,500, then we have Finau, Fitzpatrick, Answer in the 8K range, Kokrak, Leishman, and Rose in the 7K range, and then it drops to the 6K range. So you look at it a couple ways. Either you find your 6K golfers from here, from this bucket, or you really invest on one of these guys, 7, 8, and above, or even just 7K and above. This is crazy. You know, I'll look in my strategy video to try to determine, you know, who I want to play from this, but this is a very strong bucket. And currently I'm projecting around 2 to finish inside the top 10, and if that's the case, we need to find someone from here. I mean, I'll leave it up to you guys who you think is the best one. Bryson, I'm really liking. He has really good Bermuda stats, especially for 2021. Yeah, I do like Bryson. So that will conclude the recent form buckets. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say. And the last one to talk about is our strokes gained buckets. So I always have these static week in and week out. Your number 1 bucket is all stats positive, and we're looking at the 4 major stat categories: strokes gained off the tee, approach, around the green, and putting. So all 4 of those are positive. They're strokes gained 1. Strokes gained 2 is positive off the tee and positive putting with 1 negative stat in between. Strokes gained bucket 3 is positive off the tee and negative putting and whatever stat in between. Strokes gained 4 is negative off the tee, positive putting, and whatever stat in between. 5 is negative off the tee and negative putting with, you get it, any stat in between. And then 6 is no strokes gained stats. So this is this is typically your European golfers as well as your Korn Ferry golfers. So just keep that in mind. And we're not gonna go crazy throughout all of this. I'm just going to let you know that they're color coded based off of the strokes gained stats. So here are all your strokes gained 1 golfers, and I have it by salary. So obviously some really good golfers here. Same applies kind of with strokes gained 2, although it drops kind of quickly from your 9 to 8K range, and then from there down. I haven't seen a lot of success with your strokes gained 2 golfers, which is crazy. Maybe not so much crazy, but it's weird because you can make the argument that a lot of these golfers are just as good as, say, some of the strokes gained 1 golfers. But yeah, I just haven't seen that much success from this bucket. I see more success from the strokes gained 3 bucket, and that's your positive off the tee, negative putting. And there's probably a good reason behind that. I think it's usually your good off the tee golfers with good approach. It always makes the putting negative. Like, it always makes the putting look worse than what it is. But in truth, these guys are hitting the ball close enough. They're just not making enough putts to have positive putting splits. And it's a video I've been meaning to get to show everyone how strokes gain stats really look like, because a lot of people don't understand. A lot of industry guys talk about strokes gain as if it's their Bible, and they don't quite understand what those stats mean. So usually these guys here in the strokes gain threes, really good off the tee, really good on approach, you're going to have negative putting stats, or these guys are winning the tournaments all the time. So a pretty decent group of golfers here. We have past winners: Cameron Champ, Lucas Glover, Colin Morikawa. I mean, KH Lee has won this year. So has Siwoo Kim. So has Sergio. So is Hideki. Like, they've all won. So maybe it's Paul Casey's turn. Maybe it's Will Zalatoris gets his win, and that'll cement his PGA Tour card. I don't know. We'll see. Strokes gain 4. Golfers that are negative off the tee but positive putting. I can tell you what, Jordan Spieth is actually trending in the right direction when it comes to off the tee. His game is improving, and I actually don't mind him here because it still takes a little strategy to play this course. He does have a cut now that he's playing, so a lot of good signs pointing for Mr. Jordan Spieth. Yeah, I really don't have anything else to say about the rest of the guys here. Same kind of applies for strokes gain bucket 5 golfers. I really don't care. And then your 6, again, like I said, your European golfers or your Korn Ferry Tour golfers. But you can see they're all Euro Tour golfers. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it. 1 hour 2 minutes. I'm looking at a past video of what I've covered. 1 hour 1 minute, so we're kind of on par. I'm gonna have a strategy video tomorrow, and then we're gonna have a PrizePicks video on Wednesday. If you haven't heard, I've partnered with PrizePicks, which is awesome. I've played their contest for the Olympics, and I can tell you, I put $50 in. My balance currently is sitting at $200, so I'm doing pretty decent. And hopefully that good luck kind of continues. And we'll go over it in the PrizePicks, but you can expect that video on Wednesday. So we kind of have a full gamut of videos to do this week. Preview right now, strategy tomorrow, PrizePicks Wednesday, and then review on Sunday. The season's coming to a close. We have this one and then the Wyndham Championship next week, and then it's playoffs. So season's coming to an end very, very shortly. So anyways, with that being said, I want to thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.